Hi guys, today I'm going to show you what the endgame for ZenlessZoneZero looks like. Let's get into it. So first, let's take a look at where I am in the game and what I really mean by endgame. Now, to be absolutely clear, not every single character that I have in the game is completely finished. That's pretty impossible right now, and you might not even see a true endgame account or build up until something like 2 to 3 months into the game for the next reason that I'm about to provide, which is take a look at where the game actually ends. Currently, at the top left of my screen, it says life has returned to normal, rebuild the Internot account, and this might sound like the goofy intro to a quest, but no, there's actually just nothing else available. If you take a look at all the notifications, the schedules, everything that is currently here are either spoilers, so I apologize for this in advance, or they're side quests and there's nothing else to look at. Currently, we can still look at what the later Internot levels look like, and there are still rewards that include things like basically your fragile resin and things like noise reduction master copies, which is what you can use to create certain disk drives, which is the gear in this game. But between me completing the story, I also cleared the non-refreshing abyss or memory of chaos, whichever you choose to call it. The first 10 floors of Shiyu Defense have been cleared, and I'm currently in the progress of going through the repeated or the actual changing Shiyu Defense slowly but surely, though it is kind of difficult. Now, to give you a preview of what happens in the endgame, let me be clear. We've got enemies that are level 50, a mixture of resistances. Some enemies have resistances, some don't. You're gonna need 2 teams starting at the level 7 of the Forgotten Halls or Abyss equivalent for the beginner Abyss. But afterwards, you're gonna have to mix and match your teams. As you can see here, some are weak to Ether, and some, as you can see as I scroll or move myself down, are weak to electric. Before I get too in-depth about what the endgame looks like, I want to be absolutely clear with the story as well. There are going to be scenarios where you'll see something like a mission available, or on occasion you'll see something like a blue mission appear here. In some cases, that's just a trust quest. And for everything else, although there are certain scenarios or certain times where you are able to get an additional quest, more often than not, there is a slight increase to the total EXP that you have. But regardless of what it is, I'm still well over 7,000 EXP away from level 40, which, if I'm not mistaken, is when I get a boost or an improvement to all of my activities. And speaking of that, I've already previewed some of my concerns and also what you get from that in the previous video. But to take a look at specifically what you get from each of the different farming materials, let's go to each of the locations and see what you can be given. So as you can see here, the first thing that you can do is increase the number of mobs that you fight here. This doesn't seem to be an increase, and as far as I could tell, there is no difference specifically from 30 to 40. All in all, at max, and what we've seen from closed betas is that your max battery cost is going to always end up being a total of 100 if you're trying to clear out as many as possible. But you aren't unlocking that at 40. I'm not level 40, as you can see here. So if there is something additional that I'm missing here or that they've added, I'll fill in or I'll pin it to the comment section down below. As you can see through all the other pieces of content as well, you have the reinforced attack components, you have attack components. It's pretty much just a max total of 100 battery costs being used at once. And to be clear, once you unlock level 40, it does seem like maybe you'll get more of each per clear, but I haven't actually seen exactly what you get in terms of whether this menu will convert into giving you another slot. As it stands right now, and from what I understand, they shouldn't be allowing you to do more than 100 battery cost per entry, though that does basically indicate that the reinforced support components or all the actual materials that you're farming for will be what increases instead, as opposed to the total slot of enemies that you're fighting. Now, on that note, as we talk about upgrades for characters and leveling up characters beyond level 40, there is of course the Pioneer certification seal. So this is likely what I'm expecting to also get dropped, if not just an improvement to what we have currently. But as you see through the promotion preview, you do end up seeing that the level cap for these characters appear to be 60, which is fine, and you of course receive master tapes as well. But as you can see from here, you do need to be account level 40 to raise your character's level cap to 50, and once you're level 50 on your account, you could be level 60. So your Internot level directly correlates to what you have access to or what you can unlock. But I also want to highlight just how cool or how impactful the custom deck that you can do is, especially once we get to the point where you aren't looking at something like advanced and only having the basic certifications or the basic level materials, because ultimately once we gain access to the higher or the red or higher advanced level materials that you have, whatever it is, expert, being able to customize what you want from here will be cool. However, you will have to keep in mind that with your coffee, you may receive an additional few bonuses, but that is pretty impactful. And as you can see right here by the up enhancement or the up notification here, if I end up doing more of these, I have a better chance of getting bonus drops from this. And this may be better than trying to do customs at the moment, though there may end up being some new coffees in the game that may double or may affect more than one of these drop rate farms. customs. Who knows? Regardless right now though, the custom is cool if you want to farm out more things at once. Although if you are going to use your coffee or make use of the coffee and you want to be a bit more efficient, by all means use the coffee, and then the next day maybe you could switch your coffee up from being this and use it on something like your weapon or your agent exp. Just don't ignore the coffee, because I was not aware of how impactful or how many bonus drops you can get for the entire day. It's basically like a rate up or like a tiny bonus rate up if you do end up using the coffee. But let's move on from the character ascension materials and let's talk about the expert challenge, because as you see right here at level 35 you do gain a little bit of Internot exp, which is the case for all. However, as it stands right now, I'm getting somewhere between 5 and 6 of the audio booster masters, 3 of the higher dimensional data Crimson Oz, or whatever material you want to farm for. These are the actual like boss specific ascension materials, similar to the system that you need to level up your character every 10 or so levels in a game like Star Rail or with Wuthering Waves. But this is pretty straightforward. As you can see, at 35 you gain 1 additional as opposed to 25, and you also gain an additional audio booster master copy chance. So hypothetically speaking, once we get to 45 you would assume that this ends up being 4, and then once you hit level 55 you get 5. But it does mean that, at least for right now, if you are farming, it's going to feel a little bit worse than later on. But depending on how long you take to farm out and things, you might not even see level 55 for, I don't know, another 2 to 3 months. If you're free to play, maybe even another 6, who knows. But we've seen the combat simulation. Let's talk about routine cleanup. Now for routine cleanup, as you can see, I now have access to golds, and something that I've been trying to look into but I'm not quite sure, and I'll have to find out once I actually hit level 40, is that there was a sentiment towards not farming or trying to farm until you were at least Internot level 40, and the thought that I had was that once you hit Internot level 40 you have access to the level 50 mobs. But as you see here, it says you have to reach Internot level 45 and reach proxy reputation elite proxy to unlock this. However, as it stands right now, this is obviously 5 levels further than what I had initially thought, and given that I'm level 39 right now, this will probably be, I don't know, maybe another 4 or 5 days before I even unlock this. So in terms of when you're actually supposed to farm, clearly being Internot level 50 and unlocking legendary proxy, so you hypothetically speaking get mostly if not all golds, would be really nice. However, I don't know what is at 60, because obviously they've changed things and there's no way to see right now given I'm level 39. But if you do want to farm out for disc drives right now, you actually have the ability to farm out or challenge or do level 40 disc drive challenges at level 35, which is kind of helpful if you want to get golds. And given that they've kind of changed the system, since formerly there were 6 stages and now there's only, I guess, 4, it may be worth it now for you to farm a little bit earlier as opposed to later. Now, as I make that suggestion, I do want to remind you guys that it costs an absolute insane amount of energy to farm out things like the W engine exp, the promotion exp, doing your expert challenges if you want to ascend or level your character every 10 levels, getting weapon exp, ascending your weapons at the same time. All these contribute to a very high load or a very high investment in terms of your battery charges. And even though your routine cleanup or your disk drives is really important for stats, whether or not you'll even be able to get to this point is up for debate, since you're going to be spending a lot of time waiting as opposed to actively farming out, given that you only get 240 energy a day. Now finally, we have notorious hunts, which are your weeklies, and depending on which character you're leveling, here are the rewards that you can see at level 40. You've got your Internot exp, you've got the living drive, you've got investigation merits, a W engine chip that allows you to craft your own personalized weapon or wenjin, whatever you want to call it, specifically that you choose at the gadget store, and then a bunch of resources like the audio booster masters, the plating agents, and Denny's. Now, as is the case with all weeklies, you only have the ability to do this 3 times, so be careful or choose wisely for what you use this on. However, what I highly recommend you to use this on is going to be your main DPS, because as I'll be talking about in a second, the Shiyu Defense is no joke. Now, to show you the characters that I have right now, I do have Ellen, and as you see right now, currently I don't have the ability to unlock the core skill enhancement that you need a ferocious grip for, since it says that it requires agent level 45. However, as it is right now, I'm pre-farming out a little bit because I don't want to be caught off guard and it's the first week. But even for Grace, my second carry, unfortunately, the resource that I'm going to be needing as well is also different. Now, on the side here, as you see, it's a completely different material that I also need alongside the expert challenge material. So be very mindful of your resources, not just with the weeklies that I was mentioning a little bit earlier, but also with your expert challenges, because it requires 9 of these to gain not only an additional 25 attack, but also to gain a new effect with her skill. Now, you've seen the DPS, you've seen all the different activities. What does the end game actually look like? Well, here's a short montage of what it looks like to clear through some of the enemies and the bosses in the Shiyu Defense that is repeating or refreshing, aka the abyss of ZenlessZoneZero.
more. Get back.
Clear out. Be gone.
Thank you for your patience. Clear out. 3, 2, 1, go!
Time to end this.
Time to strike!
Now here are my thoughts after clearing a bit of the abyss. DPS is king, and it doesn't matter how flexible or how good the spread of your DPS are. If you're a main DPS or if one character isn't able to do a load of damage, forget getting your S, and sometimes even forget getting your A. Now I do want to make mention about the fact that it doesn't necessarily matter how well you perform in the Forgotten Hall or the first 10 stages of the Frontier here. As you can see here, I ended up actually getting a B, which was because I didn't upgrade my characters well enough. However, once you get to the Shiyu Defense, this is where things matter. There is 24 days until this refreshes, so you have a load of time to clear out, but the actual rewards here are what matters. Currently, projections are that this will likely be on a 2-week cycle if we're taking into consideration things like Star Rail. The rewards for the refreshing Shiyu Defense are definitely more important. As you can see here, we've got 30 polychromes per clear, depending on what level you get. And although for the initial Shiyu Defense, you can always come back to this or clear, these are the ones that you have to clear within 24 days, which is a lot of time to be fair, but you definitely don't want to miss out on the later ones because they actually change from giving you 30 each to 40, and you end up getting investigation merits at the later end as opposed to getting the W engine chips or the noise reduction master copies early on. It's a bit of a weird system. They changed the rewards quite a bit, and of course, at the end of it all, you do want to get all of these resources completely. Keep in mind though that with how free-to-plays are currently progressing through the game, both in terms of story and with stamina, you may not actually be able to get up to Shiyu Defense for maybe another week or so, depending on how much you invest, depending on if you refresh, etc. But for those of you playing even more casually, the likelihood that you'll even get to the repeatable Shiyu Defense may be less likely than you think. Now let's talk about the two teams I used to get up to the end game. My first team was Ellen alongside Lycone and Sokaku in the mono ice team, and the second team that I used was Grace, Kaleda, and Rina. The first team focuses primarily around doing ice, getting your ice anomaly and all the ice damage, alongside being more crit focused and buffing up Ellen, who is your hyper carry. But the second team that you see here is primarily because I love playing Grace, and although I do understand that she would likely be better alongside maybe someone like Anton or maybe another DPS composition, I'm currently using Grace as my main DPS because, well, I like her, and that's just what I'm gonna do because I'm not trying to play super meta for this. However, in terms of how much damage the both of these teams are doing, the Ellen team is absolutely smacking through the competition. It's not even close. The Grace, Kaleda, Rina team is actually kind of holding me back despite having 3 S level characters, and the main reason for that, at least from what I understand, is number 1, because Ellen does an insane amount of damage. Number 2, as you can see here, there are definitely more ice recommended attribute stages specifically to cater to Ellen, which makes sense because she's the rate up character right now, and of course Hoyoverse wants Ellen to look really good, so they're gonna make stages that are specifically catered towards ice. Even from what I've seen right now, there aren't that many electric benefiting stages, but that is neither here nor there. This is just the experience that I've seen, and more often than not, rather than having the bonus or recommended attribute because the enemy is weak, Ellen ends up being the higher performing damage dealer because she has high base stats. I have her signature, which is absolutely insane, and despite me also having Grace's signature, rest in peace my 50-50 by the way, Grace still falls short compared to Ellen. Now, in terms of difficulty and clearing, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. The bosses do hit hard. They aren't at the point of Wuthering Waves where if you get hit once or twice, you immediately lose the character. However, I do think that the way that the game is kind of fixated right now is that although the enemies will not kill you or punish you for making one mistake, not managing to do all of your perfect assists in a row or not taking advantage of every single chain attack or attacking in certain orders effectively means that you lose or you've been defeated. Now, this may be a little bit unfortunate for those of you that want to kind of experience the every single second your life is on the line kind of edgy playstyle, but fortunately for you, you are going to have to hit pretty much every single assist perfectly if you want to squeeze out enough DPS to get things like the A or S rank for this Shiyu Defense. As someone that has literally been doing this, no joke, for like maybe 4 or 5 hours right now, just to clear out and do as much damage as possible, any non-perfect rotation done with your characters almost instantly means that you're going to have to invest in more skills, better gear, or you're going to have to wail to get more imprints because because that's how tight the damage windows are. This is not a cakewalk, and although you can argue that having more HP and not doing enough damage is not necessarily an indicator for how good or how hard content is, it does mean that you have to take advantage of every single moment to do the perfect rotation whenever you can, and that also means that every dodge that you do, every rotation that you do, every single chain cycle, every single rotation, turn order has to be absolutely perfect if you want to clear, especially at these early levels. That's my experience currently with the game. However, I do want to mention that while all of this is very difficult at times, this does sound very eerily similar to something that you may be familiar with. Yeah, that's right, it's Wuthering Waves. If you guys recall or have even tried a game like Wuthering Waves, you're familiar with how difficult the game was initially. The overworld mobs and the things that were casually trash mobs walking around by no means pose any struggle for you, which is basically what's happening in ZenlessZoneZero. But once you got to the hologram challenges or the Tower of Abyss, you notice that they did so much more damage and punished you so much more, and you weren't able to do damage. Therefore, you had to play a bit more risky, or you had to squeeze out damage as much as you can, dodging as many mechanics as you can, doing perfect rotations so that you can squeeze out a little bit more damage and get something like a 2-star or 3-star in the Tower of Abyss. This is identical to what people are going to have to be doing with ZenlessZoneZero, but given that I'm almost able to get an S within the challenge target time at level 40 and not at level 60, this does mean that we are likely going to see the end game look similar to what Wuthering Waves has, but we're not going to have holograms. And that's just it, guys. Wuthering Waves and ZenlessZoneZero are definitely going to feel challenging when you aren't fully leveled, because ultimately that's not how the end game and how they intend you to play every character. Arguably, some characters feel or are better or worse because of that reason. A character like Ellen Jo, for instance, performs way better than some of the other characters, specifically because all of her kit is very straightforward. She does a load of damage and she can kind of mob well. But the truth is that once we hit level 60, from what I can tell, all these bosses are going to die much quicker. It'll be more of a time trial and trying to clear as fast as possible, as opposed to trying to dodge and being fearful of your life. Future Connor here, talking and referring to old past Connor. The reason why you want to reach level 40 Internot, and something that I completely forgot and I even talked about in the other video, was that you want to unlock the music store level 3 here, which allows you to guaranteed an S drive alongside having a main stat orientation. I completely blanked on this, I apologize. However, if you want to get the resources, or if you want to be able to even do this, so if you want to farm out disk drives earlier, that's totally fine. But in terms of re-rolling or in terms of upgrading them, you might not want to do this until you get to music store level 3. However, the drops that you get at Internot level 40 don't actually change. It just allows you to force a specific main stat like an element or an anomaly proficiency or an anomaly mastery. Sorry for the confusion and the mix up there. Let's get back into it. But yeah, this was basically everything that happens in the end game of ZenlessZoneZero. As it stands right now, I'm going to try and clear as much of the abyss as I can. I will probably have cleared more by the time of this recording. However, I just finished all the story very recently. I've been trying to find every single secret when it comes to EXP. All the other collectibles, of course, will take longer, but anything that gives me EXP, I'm currently trying to look into, and this is what I found. Ultimately, I think that ZenlessZoneZero, after, I don't know, something like 72 hours, was pretty cool. The difficulty of the enemies, of course, is questionable, especially as you're progressing through the story, and I think they're definitely not going to get harder per se, though there are definitely mobs that attack a little bit more, and there are even some instances where having to juggle or fight multiple enemies is more annoying than anything I've ever seen. That being said, Wuthering Waves has had the same, where before a specific boss fight, Tempest Mephis comes to mind, there'll be enemies that you have to clear up first, and that isn't even a challenging thing per se, they're just annoying. So I wouldn't say that ZenlessZoneZero gets difficult, even though they end up doing things like that to combat or make the fight a little bit more difficult. It's just more of an annoyance because you have to group them together. That being said, since I'm able to clear it with basically half-geared characters and all of them being at level 40, despite there being a cap of level 60, that does insinuate that the game will definitely get easier and will likely be clearable with any character once you're level 60. No difficulty as I could tell right now. Future Crown back for a second time because I also kind of looked into this as I was seeing other people that cleared the Shiyu Defense later. The enemy is just level 70 as you get later and later at the bosses, so that might be a little bit difficult. I haven't seen that far into the repeatable abyss or a memory of chaos currently, so that may be where a little bit of the difficulty comes from. But let me conclude all my thoughts when it comes to the end game and ZenlessZoneZero. ZenlessZoneZero is a fun game. Ultimately, if you're looking for a game that punishes you or forces you to block every single hit, you'll find that from ZenlessZoneZero. However, your life won't be at risk, and sometimes the bosses or the enemies attack fairly infrequently. This is very valid criticism. As I've seen while fighting through the abyss or doing the Shiyu defense, the enemies attack you on occasion, but it's very cyclical. You almost predict it at all times, and being able to do your perfect assist at the right time is usually more than enough to avoid taking damage. However, as I said, I haven't seen the latest stages of Memory of Chaos or the Abyss, so whether or not the level 70 or them being higher level than me will one-shot me, I'm not quite sure, but I would say that after 72 hours of playing the game is quite enjoyable. It is definitely difficult if you're trying to get the highest stage rewards for combat, though I don't feel like most players will be in danger, especially once you get to level 50, level 60 on your characters. If I could hope for anything in terms of improvements or changes for the future of this game, I do feel like maybe making bosses that are a bit more intricate could be interesting. However, as it is right now at level 40, I am definitely struggling to fixate on anything but doing as much damage as possible, and it is quite taxing both on my hands and on my brain, though I'm not a very good player and don't have good hands or brain either, to actually be able to focus on complex mechanics outside of, again, just dodging or doing perfect assists. At the end of it all, guys, I would say ZenlessZoneZero definitely a 7 out of 10 in terms of combat. If I were to give ZenlessZoneZero a rating in terms of its endgame, I would definitely say the endgame is pretty okay. It feels like the rewards are, of course, gonna have to build up, and we'll have to see how annoying building characters are, similar to how it was with Wuthering Waves, where as you got to like level 80 or 90, there's like a huge damage increase, but it also costs you like 1,000,000 credits to do anything in that game. So I'll hold off on super endgame judgment or reviews for now, but as I've seen right now, getting to the end game does take a long time. However, once you get to the end game, roughly that 39 to 40 range, the rewards feel okay. Once you get to 40, you can recycle some of your gear and instantly get main stats for gear that you want, which feels pretty good in my opinion. And the combat itself is more of a time trial, but honestly, for the Tower of Adversity, it also felt like a time trial. They don't give you any of the hologram 6 mechanics in the Tower of Adversity, so it didn't even feel that challenging as well compared to the holograms itself. Long story short, if I were to compare the big differences between a game like ZenlessZoneZero and Wuthering Waves, it's pretty much just the hologram. I didn't feel like the Tower of Adversity was actually that challenging in Wuthering Waves. It kind of just felt like the most annoying thing of all time was when they gave you monsters to fight prior to fighting the actual main boss of a floor. But that's not challenging, that's annoying, and that's also what ZenlessZoneZero has. So feels like in terms of their end game BIS mode, they're very similar. ZenlessZoneZero doesn't have some hologram-esque feature to it though. So at the end of it all, guys, end game systems I'd probably say is a 7 out of 10. Combat likely going to be a 6.5 out of 10. If you're curious in terms of Wuthering Waves endgame, I definitely say it's equal to the endgame of ZenlessZoneZero. You're just clearing out, you're doing your dailies. It feels exactly the same, so I have the exact same rating for that and ZenlessZoneZero. But the combat, obviously, if I want to do a hologram 6, this would definitely improve its rating to 8 if I'm someone that wants to be more competitive or have my blood boil a little bit more. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this review of the endgame for ZenlessZoneZero. Do know that a lot of people have been giving their reviews after 24 hours, but I wanted to get through all of the content, literally to the point where not only have I gotten to the repeatable memory of Chaos or Abyss, whatever it's called, Shiyu Defense. God, I'm playing too many gacha games at this point. But I've also completed the story, and there's nothing else for me to do right now, so I feel like this gives me a little bit more justification for my feelings on the game. There's nothing else for me to do. I'm just going to be doing dailies and farming out my gear as I can. But thanks again for watching, everyone. I appreciate it so much. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. If you guys are curious about more ZenlessZoneZero content, feel free to let me know in the comment section, or join any of my socials, and feel free to let me know there. Thanks again for watching, though, everyone. I'll see you all next time. Good night.